Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like these. Now, let's get into today's story video.
I, 26 female, want to invite my parents, 50s male/female, to my wedding, but I'm still mad at them for siding with my sister, 30 female, when she cheated with my ex-fiance, 26 male. Hello, Reddit. I have an issue and don't know what to do. I apologize in advance for the length of this post. I went to the United States to attend university around 7 years ago. I met a man named Ray when I was there. Ray and I met in our second years of university and began dating right away. I believed he was the ideal person, and everything between us was wonderful as well. We were both born in the same nation, but his parents had retired and were now living on a Southeast Asian island. Ray had to return to our native country after graduation to serve in the military. It is required for all men in our country. I took a job in the United States, and we both agreed that when he finished his 2-year duty, he would return and we would marry. When he returned to our nation, I accompanied him for a week to present him to my family and to send him off to the military. Because his parents did not live in our nation, my family asked him to stay with them during his military leave. I have a 4-year-old sister with whom I have never gotten along, mostly because I am adopted and she does not consider adopted children to be part of the family. We were the only 2 children, and although my parents never really compared us, she was always quite competitive with me. As a result, I never had a good connection with her, and when I came to the United States for university, we never spoke. To cut a long tale short, Ray and my sister undoubtedly slept together numerous times while he was on leave from the army. I don't believe they intended to tell me, but they were stupid enough not to use protection, and she became pregnant. Being a single mother is very difficult in my own country, therefore there was a lot of pressure on Ray to marry her. Of course, I canceled my relationship with Ray as soon as I found out what had transpired, and Ray and my sister eventually married and had a baby boy. My parents were aware of how heartbroken I was at the time, and they were also disappointed with both Ray and my sister, but since my sister was expecting their first child, they opted to support her. They allowed her to live with them while Ray finished his military duty, paid for their wedding and all prenatal care, and essentially committed their life to my sister and their baby. Even today, they have Ray working for my father's firm, and my sister and Ray reside barely 5 minutes away. They are deeply invested in one another's life. Because my sister was right there, and because my parents were both worried and delighted about delivering their first grandchild, they focused all of their attention on making sure the baby was okay. My parents attempted to contact me again when Ray left the military and he and my sister moved into their own house. But by then, I was already furious at them for ignoring me during the whole ordeal. I was distraught at the moment, and my parents' undivided devotion to my sister shattered me much more. I stopped communicating with them. I know they were devastated. They sent me several emails and phone calls. And, although I understand that the circumstance was not their fault, I felt deceived by both my sister and them at the moment. It's been 2 years since then, and I've met another guy, James, with whom I've fallen in love. He is wonderful to me and, above all, trustworthy. James and I want to marry the following year. He is aware of my family situation and realizes that my sister and Ray will never be a part of our life. I am adamant about this. He also understands that I want to reconnect with my parents and pushed me to invite them to our wedding as an olive branch. I, too, want them to be there, yet I can't help but feel enraged every time I think about them. How can I stop being so furious with them and start talking to them again? I genuinely want my parents to be a part of my wedding day. I've wanted them to attend since I was a small child, but I can't get over this resentment. Any suggestions? Edit. Thank you all so much for your help. I am reading every single remark and am grateful to everyone who has shared your opinions on this with me. I haven't talked to many people about this issue other from James, so it seems like I'm finally getting everything off my chest, and I appreciate you allowing me to do so. Update. Prior to this circumstance, my mother and I were quite close, and even when I went to the United States, we spoke on the phone at least once every other day. When my sister became pregnant and returned to their house, they were so preoccupied with her and planning for the baby and my sister's future that they only phoned about once every other week. And since my sister was living with them and was such an important part of their life, the talks were mostly around her and the baby. When I informed them I didn't want to hear anything about my sister or her kid, the call stopped completely. They would phone me once every couple of months to make sure I was all right, but the conversations were just a few minutes long. I attempted to contact my mother as well, but I knew she was uncomfortable since my sister was living with them, so phone chats with her were usually brief and superficial. After Ray returned from his military duty, he and my sister moved into their own house, and my parents attempted to contact me more often, I presume to provide support, but I was pretty miserable at the time and didn't want to speak to them at all. I believe all I wanted was for my parents to express that they still loved me and knew how much I was struggling. Perhaps they didn't know how to support both me and my sister at the same time, but it seemed like they weren't there for me at all at my darkest hour. I was in a new country with a new job, and I didn't have anybody to lean on, so the fact that I couldn't even phone my parents and tell them how much I was suffering made me feel like there was no one at all who cared about me. Story 2. I cheated on my wife and I missed the other woman 18 months later. Background: I had an affair with a gorgeous, successful, and foreign woman whom I met at a bar and had cheated on my wife with. Before, or after, I've never done anything like this, and it makes me feel terrible since my wife is a wonderful person who is passionately dedicated, and even more so because I no longer think I'm in love with her, but she is my wife. I care for her, she's unquestionably my closest friend, but she doesn't have anything romantic about her at all. Although the affair lasted just 1 week, we managed to do considerably more in that time than my wife and I had managed in the preceding years. I felt awful for betraying my wife, and after a week, I came clean about what I'd done. I had a misunderstanding with the other woman, Al. Al sent me a letter in which she expressed her feelings for me and said how much she would miss me. It broke my heart to say goodbye to her, something I had never shared with anybody else. However, when my wife threatened to take my child away from me, I broke down in tears for the first time in years. Al only became interested in me after I told her I was divorced from my wife. When she found out I was still married, she was angry, but I explained that things were not going well at home and that I wanted to divorce. She was relieved. I did. Today, after 18 months of not talking with the other woman, all I want to do is get back together with her as soon as possible. I find myself looking for her on the internet, and I even sent her a long and heartfelt letter, which I did not send recently in an effort to make this feeling go away, but I just can't seem to shake it. It seems like I'm listening to a stuck record in my brain. I've attempted couples counseling and have just began one-to-one sessions with a therapist via Zoom in an attempt to get to the bottom of this. I like to listen to music that remind me of the ow every now and again to remind myself of how much fun we had. The fact is that I can't stand the notion of abandoning my child. I don't want to hurt my wife, who continually questions why I'm only half-heartedly involved in the relationship. Even if I express my dissatisfaction to her, I am certain that she will leave and take our kid. As a matter of fact, I'm an incredibly attentive and committed parent, yet I'm a remote and aloof husband. My only choice seems to be divorce. My wife abandons me, takes our kid, and returns to her own country. After 18 months, I call the owl out of the blue and hope she remembers my foolish. Every 3 to 6 months, I see my kid, who is growing up without me. He spends the vast majority of his time with his in-laws. My wife is either damaged by the process or emerges stronger as a result of it without me there. If I'm correct about Al, we'll reconnect and have an adventurous and intriguing life together. If I'm incorrect, I'll be alone and swiping into my 50s, probably asking my wife to take me back. Continue to stay married, work on the relationship, and spend the rest of my life wondering what may have been with Al. I'm hoping to get over Al eventually, but 18 months later, it doesn't seem realistic. I've been in this situation for almost a year, and it's making me sad, uninspired, and miserable. Knowing my ideas, if someone close to me was married to someone like me, I'd urge them to dump him immediately and run a mile. I feel like the correct thing to do is to try to forget about Al, but I don't want to forget the sensation, the intensity of it, and the way she made me feel. Seeking advice from folks who have taken either road and what their outcomes were.